Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and I'd like to welcome you to the Practical Stoic Podcast, where I give you practical Stoic advice for modern times. If you'd like to learn more about Stoicism, or if you want some added inspiration in your day, just go to my website. It's risetothegoodlife.com. If you're interested in transforming your life with Stoic principles, then I also offer one-on-one coaching. To book your first free session, just head to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching and follow the links. But for now, enjoy this episode. Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast. So last week was Valentine's Day, and because I lacked basic foresight and planning, I didn't think to ask a question about relationships for the Wednesday podcast. So this week I'm going to do just that, and I've already asked everyone on my email list and everybody in the Practical Stoic Mastermind on Facebook how they think that Stoicism has improved their relationships. So if you've been looking for ways to use Stoicism to spice up your marriage, which I'm almost certain that you haven't, or if you've been wondering about how Stoicism can make you a better friend, father, mother, or co-worker, then I'm excited to bring you some really awesome answers from many of the Stoics in our community, starting with a regular on this show, Danny. And he says, the first example that comes to my mind is my relationship with my youngest son. My 7-year-old and I are twins when it comes to our disposition, and I understand him emotionally. My 3-year-old son is much more like my wife, and it has been challenging to connect with him on the same level. I noticed that as I changed my perception in July of last year, our relationship has improved drastically. I now find him turning to me for comfort where before he went to his mother. I'm so grateful for the profound positive effects of something so simple, changing how I viewed him and our relationship. So thank you so much for that answer, Danny. That's a great insight. That sometimes all it takes is to change the perception, which the Stoics teach is the source of most pain. I'm really glad that this skill of changing the perception has improved your relationship with your son, so keep it up. The next answer comes from Shari, and she says, keeping memento mori in front of me at all times reminds me to approach all of my loved ones with unabashed affection and grace. If I think, what if this is my last interaction, then I don't hold back. I find myself responding in a more generous manner, and this is very satisfying. So thanks so much for that, Shari. I really agree that memento mori is such an important thought to have in our mind constantly. For those who are new to Stoicism, memento mori basically means remember you're going to die. So when we remember that today could be our last day, it encourages us to really think carefully about the way that we're approaching our loved ones, and also about the way that we're living our own lives. So I agree that this is such a helpful tool to use in our relationships. Thanks again, Shari. Next, we had a response from Michael, and he said, I'm the caregiver to 2 physically and mentally deteriorating family members now. Stoicism has helped me to have greater patience, and I often think about amor fati. Michael, thank you so much for your answer, and again, for those who are new to Stoicism, amor fati means love your fate. So, Michael, as a caregiver, you're already worthy of so much admiration, and on top of that, you're using Stoicism to help you become an even better caregiver, which really impresses me even more. I think that amor fati really is such a powerful thought to have constantly on one's mind, especially when you're in situations where you have responsibilities like you do, Michael. Amor fati can allow us to step back and see how we can learn and grow from what we've been given by fate, instead of complaining or living with resentment. So, Michael, you're a great man. Keep it up. Next, we have an answer from Dan, and he said, when I first began my journey in Stoicism, it was primarily about my inner life, learning to control the passions and accept worldly events beyond my control. That has indirectly improved my relationships, because a more tranquil inner life has led to a more tranquil demeanor, which makes me more pleasant to be around. However, as my knowledge of Stoicism has increased, I've come to understand that internal control is only part of the story. Stoicism calls upon us to live according to our nature. For humans, that is to make progress in developing our reason and virtue. But it is also fulfilling our duty and role as social animals. We have to apply virtue not only to our inward state, but also to our relationships with others. That means that I have to apply virtue, particularly the cardinal virtue of justice, towards my wife, parents, friends, co-workers, neighbors, and fellow citizens, which incorporates all of humanity if you ascribe to the Stoic view of cosmopolitanism. So Dan, thank you so much for that answer. And I agree that one of the most beautiful parts of Stoicism is that it encourages us to seek harmony with all people in our lives, because we really are all connected, and all of us are just one large community. And this means that what's good for one of us is good for all of us. A person who chooses to be fair and kind and loving in all of his relationships can potentially impact millions of lives simply through his influence among those in his life. So I think you've definitely got a great perspective there. And the next answer comes from Gunnar, who says one of the realities that any family with children understands is that teenagers and toddlers can be very emotional. When tempers flare, either between my wife and the children or all of us, I try to curb my reaction to whatever argument is getting out of hand. While it may be difficult for anyone to control, I encourage my family to relax and to take a step back for a moment. Sometimes a deep breath can do wonders when trying to calm down and make sense of the situation. I try to remember that my family's arguments and emotional reactions to certain things are beyond my control. Instead of adding fuel to the fire, I encourage them and myself to see that trying to calm down is always a better option. This approach has really allowed me to better understand the conflicts within our family and see just how much a waste of time arguing and fighting can be. I'm left appreciating the everyday moments with them much more, knowing that life is far more important than meaningless conflict. Gunnar, thank you so much for the response. This is an extremely useful strategy for any conflict, to simply step back and evaluate the situation through a clear mind. It's difficult to do sometimes, I know that, but it seems like you've really been using that regularly, and I'm glad it's been working for your household. Next, we've got an answer from Heather, and she says, I've improved my relationship with my spouse by no longer allowing work to stress me out. I'm practicing Stoicism especially with work stress. I used to let it control me, and I would spend countless hours of unpaid overtime stressing and reacting to things outside of my control. Now I balance what is in my control, and I let the rest just work itself out. I no longer react to things that have nothing to do with me or I have no control over. So Heather, thank you so much for your thoughts here. You know, it's really an interesting point that you bring up, which is that sometimes if we step back and really take a look at our relationships, it's not the relationship itself that is stressing us out, but it's external events like work or other people, and they affect the relationships that are most important to us. So I think your approach by fixing your work life to make your home life better is really clever and admirable. Keep it up. Now I'll move to some answers from our email list, starting with John, who says, Stoicism has helped my relationships massively, as it's made me a calmer and more rational person. The concept that extreme emotions and reactions are harmful was a very potent message. Thanks for that answer, John. I'm glad that Stoicism has taught you to be calmer and more rational. You know, that really is one of the great outcomes of studying this amazing philosophy. And next we've got a really interesting answer from Daniel, and he says, I'll approach this question from the inverse. Stoicism has shown me that I don't have to have relationships with anyone. In the past, if a potential mate showed me the slightest interest, I would obsess over whether she liked me, why she didn't reply to a text faster, am I good enough, etc. And as per usual, it was worrying about something not in my control. Now, through Stoicism, I subscribe to the notion that what she thinks of me really is none of my business. If she likes me for who I am, fantastic. If she doesn't, then that's her impression to deal with. It's my Stoic duty to accept that groveling for an external is not the path forward. So Daniel, I think this is a really important message to share on this episode. You know, the Stoic philosophers often said that a true Stoic wants great friends, but does not need them. And I think this is what you're saying here. It's okay to want to have great friends or an amazing partner, but as soon as you start to need that, then it becomes unhealthy and potentially harmful in your current relationships. It sounds like you've got a really clear idea of who you are as well, which is very important. So thanks again for that answer. And finally, we have an answer from another regular on the show, Leo, who says, definitely Stoicism has made the following improvements to my relationships. First, most of the time I'm the calming interest and don't overreact. Second, I accept that the other person is human and has faults as well, and has not had the same exposure to Stoicism as I have. Third, I start each day as a new beginning and try to leave resentments in the past. Lastly, I practice silence more and let the other person speak, then offer non-judgmental advice. Like all of us, I'm a work in progress. However, our relationships provide the perfect vehicle to practice our Stoicism. They throw curveballs, but as Marcus Aurelius says, the obstacle is the way. Thanks for that answer, Leo. I really love your response, and I can see that many aspects of Stoicism have improved your relationships. I love your last point about practicing silence. Zeno of Citium said that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more often than we speak. And I think that this is a really important principle to follow, although I myself often fail at this. So that's all the answers for this week's Wednesday podcast, and I want to thank all of you who have contributed. I think that we've got some really great insights here for how we can use Stoicism to live with better relationships. And I hope that we can all take something from these answers and use them in our own lives. If you'd like to contribute to a future episode, then just subscribe to my email list at risetothegoodlife.com or join the Facebook group called the Practical Stoic Mastermind. Also, a few of you have mentioned that you'd like to see me on Twitter, and so I thought that I'd mention that I'm spending a little bit more time on my Twitter account lately, which has for the most part remained stagnant for the past 3 years. I'm now posting Stoic quotes, podcast episodes, and other thoughts on there. So if you're a Twitter person, then you can find me by searching my name with my middle initials. So that's Simon J.E. Drew. But anyway, I'll talk to you next time, but until then, I hope that this episode has helped you on your rise to the good life. Ciao. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. I hope that you've gotten a lot of value out of it, and I hope that it helps you to live a better life. If you have enjoyed the podcast, then don't forget to subscribe so that you'll be the first to know when there are new episodes. If you really love the podcast, then I would appreciate a positive review, whether that's on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever else you listen. Don't forget that if you're interested in one-on-one Stoic coaching, then you can head to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching to book your first free session today.